Don't get this sentence. Let's try it again. As frequent as this experience can be, bad days, it's a wonder people don't realize that they aren't suddenly writing twice as many strokes on the bad days as they are on the good. Well, we've got a double negative here, folks, that we got to try to get through. It's a wonder people don't realize they aren't suddenly writing twice as many strokes. I don't want to have to decode that right now. I don't even know what it means. I'm not sure that it's making any points whatsoever, so let's just move on. We're almost done with the article. Continuing. The difference is somewhere between our ears and our fingers. Ah, there's the second reference to the brain. Well, how does this apply to briefs or no briefs now? I think he's talking about bad days versus good days, and that it has to do with our brain. This doesn't touch the issue of briefs, so I don't know where he's going. But let's continue. It's easy to make a list of brief forms, or blame a steno theory for slow speed. The latter is especially popular among students, but when we ignore that the problem may in fact be how we're writing and not what we're writing, we miss a crucial opportunity to take things up a notch across the board. Oh boy, he's jumped in it here. Let's look again. It's easy to make a list of brief forms. Well, what does that have to do with whether you should brief or not? It's easy to make a list, but what's hard is to practice them and learn them. So I don't see any points that makes. Let's continue. Or blame a steno theory for slow speed. Yes, the more strokes you have to write, the slower you're going to be, period. Assuming all other things are equal. And we have to assume all other things are equal because you can't say one group doesn't hesitate and the other does. You simply can't. That is an unfair, broad brush statement. So writing shorter is faster, automatically, assuming all other things are equal. So yes, we can blame a steno theory for slow speed. The latter is especially popular among students. Well, do I take credit for this or not? I hate to do that, but I will say that students have been learning stroke-intensive theories for 20 years, and for the past 8 to 10 years, I've been telling every student I can possibly tell that you have to shorten your writing or you're going to have trouble, and they've been listening. And so now, if it's popular for students to blame their theory, then I'm glad to hear it. And certainly they can keep their theory, but shorten it up. Whatever theory they're on, shorten it up, write shorter, and they'll do better. I have never told anyone, get rid of your theory and learn mine. I haven't done that. I say shorten your writing. Would have been much better if you learned mine, because then you have to change nothing. But if you learn theirs, you have to change a lot. Who wants to change? Let's continue. I'm going to do the latter part of that sentence. But when we ignore that the problem may in fact be how we're writing and not what we're writing, what? He's going to the hesitation and the mastery, I guess. Well, we're not arguing about that. We miss a crucial opportunity to take things up a notch across the board. Well, now he's setting up the straw man of it's mastery and hesitation, apparently, and that's how you take things up a notch. Well, both sides do that. Briefers have to master that, and so do writer-outers. That doesn't touch the briefing question at all. Continuing. Questions like when we hesitate. Hey, I agree, hesitation's bad. We all agree. And people who follow my teachings learn not to hesitate. Questions like when we hesitate and why a stroke is hard can paint a more complete picture of steno woes and help us to better address them. Well, now you're talking about people who have trouble with hesitation and trouble with their theory. Something that Anita Paul touched on and said we have to master our theory and master hesitation, something I wholeheartedly agree with. But that doesn't touch the theory of briefing either. Maybe you're saying, author, some students are trying to brief and get better when they still haven't mastered hesitation and learning your theory. Well, if that's the case, I agree with you. They need to learn their theory well and master it. But if you're writing everything out, you're in big trouble and you're going to have trouble graduating. Even if you have no hesitation and you learn your theory well, you're still going to have trouble graduating. And say goodbye to top speeds. If we encourage each other to experiment. What? I don't recall teachers of Phoenix theory or teachers of Sten Ed encouraging their students to experiment. I don't recall that at all. But if we encourage each other to experiment and find what truly works for each of us, well, that's the problem. Students are trying to find what works to them, and they're not finding it in their stroke-intensive theories, so they're coming to people like me and finding if they write shorter, they gain a lot of speed. Go to magnumsteno.com and look at my testimonials page, and that's what you'll see. If we encourage each other to experiment and find out what truly works for each of us, then that quote-unquote speed ability and quote mastery referred to by Jennifer Bonfilio and Anita Paul are sure to be close at hand. No, that's not true. Unless you're experimenting to see what works for you, involves writing shorter. Because if you don't write shorter, you're gonna struggle, period. The math says it. Last paragraph. This isn't meant to convince brief adepts to write long or for students to cast their phrases to the wind. Well, it sounds like it. The article is called Mythbusters, and it's called Is Briefing Better? And I'm saying it is, and you're saying not necessarily. And you quote, the two people you quote say no, they're not better. This isn't meant to convince brief adepts to write long or for students to cast their phrases to the wind. Well, you've done a good job so far. There will always be reporters who swear by one method or the other. That's true. What is important is to broaden our views on what steno speed and success look like. Well, Mr. Author, I don't think you've broadened your view. I think your view has stayed right along with what Phoenix taught you, and you haven't looked at what briefing can do. Give me a call, I'll show you. Come over here and I will show you what briefing can do. It's amazing. We briefers can write things at speeds that you writer-outers could never touch at all. We can write difficult biological and technical materials and multisyllabic literaries at 220, 230, 240, and the writer-outers cannot touch those speeds with those difficult material. They simply can't. Just as no two reporters or students' notes will be the same, neither will one single approach serve everyone equally well. Okay, so you're saying because we're all different, the fundamentals of steno aren't going to help us equally well? Well, do you know in tennis, everyone's a little different the way they do things, but the fundamentals are still the same? The coaches in tennis and in every sport, football, everything, while the athletes are all different and they bring their own little nuances to it, they all agree on the fundamentals of football and of tennis and of wrestling and everything. And the fundamentals of steno are the same. In your article, we all agree that a fundamental of steno is stop hesitating. Well, that's a fundamental. That applies to all of us. Well, and to master your theory. Well, that's a fundamental, and that applies to all of us. Well, and I would submit to you that faster fingers is a fundamental and applies to all of us. And last, briefing is a fundamental and does help all of us to the extent where we will use it. Now, if you're not going to use briefing, you're just not going to use it, then briefing isn't going to help you. Then if you gain speed, then you did it without briefing. But you're not going to get to the speeds that the briefers get to. You're not going to be able to touch them. Yep. So now, last sentence. Honing in on our own natural abilities simply makes, honing in on our own natural capabilities simply makes sense. I don't get that. How does honing in on our natural capabilities apply to getting better at steno in any way? I'm sure he understands what he means, but I don't get it. So here I've just finished a pretty long and extensive article in the July 2011 Journal of Court Reporting. Mythbusters is briefing better, where the author who writes everything out himself and is known on forums to write everything out and to argue against briefing, has basically come across briefing is not better and tried to make his case, and I've attempted to debunk every point. And I hope you got something out of this. This is important to me because I believe it affects the success of thousands of students and court reporters. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.